Welcome to the HR Champions podcast with me, Phil Scott of HR Recruit, where I bring you HR leaders who've given up their time to bring their experiences within human resources, past and present. Today, I'm delighted to introduce Louise Brown, Vice Principal of Resources at Wigan and Leigh College. Louise has her CIPD Postgraduate Diploma Level 7 in HR, Employment Law and Organisational Development. And then Louise has gone on to do a Master's in Human Resources Management and has been working in human resources for over 20 years now. Now, Louise, that introduction does no justice whatsoever, so I'm going to hand over to you to give the listeners a quick introduction to yourself, please.
Thanks very much, Phil, and thank you for inviting me along today. Like you said, I'm Vice Principal at the college and have been at Wigan and Leigh College now for over 8 years. For those that aren't familiar with the organisation, we're a large education provider, providing education, both further education, higher education and apprenticeships. We've got around about a £30 million income on an annual basis and somewhere in the region of 9,000 students on average. With 4 sites across the borough, you can imagine it's quite a busy time. My role at the college has got quite a wide portfolio really across really the business support side of the college. That includes HR and OD, estates, health and safety, MIS, IT, safeguarding, additional learning support. I could go on endlessly, no doubt. So whilst my grounding and expertise is in HR, I've gone on to develop my career into what is a much wider role there at the college.
Thanks, Louise. And quite wide remit, which we'll cover in more detail. But let's start at the beginning. So how did you first get into HR?
Well, really, my earlier career, like a lot of HR professionals I come across, I sort of stumbled onto it. I didn't set about to have a career in HR. It was of a keen interest to me as I started in a variety of different roles, predominantly in education. I started to have a little bit of interaction with HR, and that sort of sparked some sort of interest in me, and I thought, that would be an interesting role to pursue. And then that ultimately became my goal, and I went on to become qualified and what I consider a successful career in HR.
Thank you. And what is it that you've enjoyed about working in HR then? What do you like about it?
Definitely the variety. No 2 days are the same, and I'm sure many HR professionals would echo that. I often joke that I'll write my memoirs one day, because there's certainly been some very interesting and challenging times along the way. I'm sure it would be very interesting reading. Seriously though, the ability to impact widely across the business is a major factor in why I enjoy working in HR. And I do enjoy interacting with people, which probably is a good job, isn't it?
You would hope so. You would hope so. And your role and your career has progressed in HR and then gone a little bit wider. What's been your secret to this progression?
I wouldn't say there's any real secret. Fundamentally, just plain hard graft. I would describe much of it about. I did my studying, started off in higher national certificates in business studies, went on to do CIPD, postgrad, masters, all whilst I was working in HR. And whilst it takes some tenacity and sort of steely determination to succeed in your studies whilst holding down a full-time role, which is often a demanding role in HR, it certainly enables a set of skills to be developed to serve you well for your future career. I personally don't think that there can be a better way to develop than this type of blended approach, gaining real experience on the ground while supporting that with your programme of study, so the theory and strategy that you're developing through your study can actually be brought to life in the role that you're doing.
And would you say there's any standout achievements that you think has stood you in good stead?
Apart from keeping my sanity, that's one major achievement. I suppose I took on my first head of role, if you will, at a local authority, and I was only there for a couple of weeks when, unfortunately, they failed an unannounced safeguarding inspection undertaken by Ofsted. This, as you probably can imagine, triggered a large-scale intervention programme involving local government North West. And at the time, HR was central to the programme of intervention and support. It was one of those times in your career that you would never really wish for, but the learning taken from being thrown into that sort of situation where you actually, quite bluntly, either sink or swim, is a pivotal moment in your career. You know, the outcome was we turned that around. There was, we got a good judgment there, and children were safe. But as part of that, HR was recognised as instrumental in the outcome that was achieved there. It also got me very quickly known across an organisation. I mean, it takes years, doesn't it, in an organisation to build up your reputation as people get to know you, get to understand you and respect your knowledge and your credibility. But the fact that I was thrown into, you know, the middle of that situation sort of expedited that path as well. So that's certainly one of the things that I go down as a marked point in my career.
Thanks, Louise. And your role has sort of gone wider than just HR. I mean, at what point did you start to try and widen your scope of responsibilities?
I think I've always been one of those people that seeks out opportunities and has a bit of an ethos for going above and beyond. And I think if you are that way inclined, things tend to either fall in your lap, present themselves in front of you. And I've seized those opportunities, really. Working at the college has given me the opportunity to have that wider exposure because of how the business is set up, the size and scale of the business. Whilst we're sizable, I think when you're working in a much larger organisation, such as a local authority, you do have to, in effect, stick to your strands, and you pick a strand. You might do your generalist role and then go off, and if you were in HR, it might be branch off into learning and development or employment advisory or organisational development. But the college, because of the size of the college, enables you to have that breadth really across the organisation, which you know then has enabled me to go on and further my career in that organisation.
And I mean, I noticed Wigan and Leigh College were in the Sunday Times list for best companies to work for. Talk to me about that. How did that come about?
Gosh, what an achievement! We were absolutely delighted when we found out we were on the list. Really, for me as a HR professional, for many years, that's something that I had aspired to do, to work for an organisation that was, you know, recognised in this external way for their achievements on an engagement level, but also to be instrumental in leading an organisation to gain that achievement. We set about our journey really to raise levels of engagement. You know, a few years ago, at a time when the sort of college had lost its way a little, not long after I joined the organisation. And it was something that I identified and really believe in, that can make a fundamental difference regarding performance and, you know, that enjoyment in a workplace.
And was that something that you had sort of come in and planned, or did you just try and put a few things in place that would naturally raise the sort of profile of the organisation? How did it all come about?
It was part of an overall plan, really, for the staff to raise levels of performance. I'm a staunch believer in the link between high performing organisations and levels of employee engagement, and that's something that I really was very interested in when I was studying, and found it fascinating analysing case studies of organisations, where there was that clear evidence and alignment of how that translated into positive outputs or achievements in those organisations. So it's always been part of that fundamental HROD strategy for me, within an organisation, if I'm leading that side of the function of the business.
And the scoring system, how many things do they score you against for this Sunday Times?
The actual survey, we don't have any influence over the questions or how the survey's conducted. It's truly one of those measures that is very objective and external. So from an organisation, we just provide them with the email addresses and contact details, and we're not part of that. It's not like an in-house type survey that you can have any influence over. There's a number of measures through how individuals are feeling, their happiness and enjoyment at work, right through to the strategy of the organisation, the ethos of the organisation, and how they value, how an individual values the input of their managers, leadership, a wide variety of things like that.
I had a quick nosy at some of the scoring, 98% in 97%, 94% in certain areas, so pretty impressive. And I mean, you mentioned sort of employee engagement. How important is employee engagement to Wigan and Leigh College?
Well, as I mentioned, I really believe in the power of having a highly engaged staff, and believe that can give you that USP between you and a competitor organisation, for example. It's very important, but not only for performance. We're a long time at work. I've always truly believed that people should enjoy going to work, and want to make the whole experience as enjoyable as we possibly can do. So there's there's benefits for both the employer and the employee if you can create and develop that rich environment.
Yeah, don't disagree. And sometimes you spend more waking hours with your work colleagues than you do your better half at home. So you've got to be happy, on both sides. So definitely agree. And something that we hear crops up quite a lot is well-being. The college, how much do they focus on employee and even student well-being? Are there any sort of initiatives that you've launched recently?
Well-being is paramount, without a doubt, and that's high up on our priorities. It's included in our strategic plan, and we have a big focus on this both for our students and our staff. If I focus on the staff side of things, I mean, life's tough, isn't it, in general? Then we go and throw a pandemic into the middle of this, and you've really got a perfect storm. As an organisation, we've always valued the importance of well-being of staff, and again, healthy, well staff, that translates into high performance again. In its broadest sense, we've done this through a lot of things like health and well-being checks, occupational health. We've provided counselling. We've worked with partners at the local authority in health about offering healthy lifestyle support and benefits. We've also encouraged a strong college community, because we believe that provides a wellbeing environment for our staff, and we've done this through staff celebrations, sporting events, activities, clubs. You know, I could go on and talk at length about that. However, during the pandemic, we've had to become really creative and see how we could keep up the momentum, because we recognise that it's going to be even more important than ever about supporting the well-being of our staff, who may well be struggling at home, feeling isolated, not have the right resources around them to work, might be homeschooling, all sorts of those things were going along. And so we very quickly came up with a range of online activities, from our weekly wellbeing tips, healthy eating, recipes, exercises, quizzes, book clubs, you name it, cycling, walking challenges, virtually. We even had a virtual flower show. So we're very pleased with how creative we were. But, you know, joking aside, the feedback from staff has been phenomenal. And I know that's a strong word, but I truly stand by that. They've been so appreciative of the support, the fact how we've kept in contact, the level of engagement remained high, and it's really helped us through this period of the pandemic as we go through these uncharted waters and try and navigate our way through it as this situation continues. So yeah, it's been a challenge, but health and well-being has remained firmly at the centre of what we believe can help us through these times.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you some questions about you as the leader. I think I chat to quite a few leaders, and they say that obviously when you hit the top, you haven't always got the mentor or management above you, and you draw experience and strength from other people. Who are the three people who've been most influential to you?
Right, okay, well, the first one, I have to say, this is a personal one, and that first and foremost is my husband. His belief in my ability to achieve, you know, has never faltered, even when mine has wobbled, with things like imposter syndrome and all sorts of things like that. And his unquestionable support and encouragement, particularly during that period of working full-time and studying full-time, having two sons as well, wasn't easy. That couldn't have been done. So he has had that influence, and now, you know, he's in a completely different profession, nothing to do with HR. I wouldn't ever want to have anything to do with HR, but he's a great sounding board, and I do consider him as one of the most influential people in my success. In my professional life, there's been two managers, two leaders I've had. One in my very early career, not naming names, but she was a sort of matriarchal type character who was quite fierce at times, but definitely a soft side once you got to know her. She taught me the importance of knowing your onions. That's what she'd call it. And at first I didn't really quite know what she was talking about, but I don't quite ask. But it was around that, you know, attention to detail, know what you're talking about, earn your stripes type of theory. She also had a belief in me from a very early stage in my career, and you know, would often say things to me: "You'll be sat in this chair at some point. So just you be mindful of this." She'd go on to tell me, but yeah, that was a great mentor at the start of my career. The second one was much further on in my career, and was actually a principal. I've worked for a few principals over recent years, and it was working for one particular principal who enabled me to really observe, learn and develop around that, becoming that transformational leader. And that was that across that wider exposure within an organisation. But it also, working with that principle, enabled me to dig deeper into the theories around that transformational leadership, the difference that leadership and the impact that can have. And also looking at things back in the theories, sort of Machiavellian type leadership behaviours and theories, and how people can fall inadvertently into those types of paths, and it's a fascinating area of research and theory that really interests me. So that principle was very influential on my later development in my career.
Thank you. And how do you learn? What personal development do you do?
I say I do learn from everybody around me continually. I'm a strong believer that whatever the role, that there's lots and lots of things that can be learned from all those that surround you. I take CPD very seriously. My most recent is I've attended SAI Business School at the University of Oxford. I was selected for one of a small group of people within the sector to go on a program that they developed about preparing to become a CEO. And the program was about equipping future leaders with a range of skills, not just technical skills, but things around that resilience and agility as an individual and as an organisation. I have to say it's one of the best development opportunities I've had going to Oxford to do that. So yeah, that's just some recent CPD, but I continually look for CPD opportunities, and obviously active member of the CIPD and a lot of their research and resources I enjoy very much.
And I mean, your career's gone pretty well as far as I can see. But have you ever faced any setbacks? And if so, how did you overcome them?
If I'm totally honest, I first joined the college over 8 years ago, and when I joined the college, I thought I'd made a terrible mistake. I'd enjoyed my previous role so much and stepped into this organisation and initially felt like I'd stepped back 20 years in my career, and I was horrified. I thought I'd wrecked my career. I'd had a steady path of progression, stayed solid periods of time at different organisations, given that commitment and really embraced roles and engaged in that. And suddenly I found myself thinking I'd made a horrible mistake. I think I mentioned earlier on in our discussion a bit about the college had lost its way somewhat, and it was at that time, just after I joined the organisation, and it felt like I had no opportunity to influence or change that with what I was experiencing. Fortunately, a new principal joined the college not long after that. This was a tough time, tough transformation programme was set about to turn the ship around, so to speak. Could have been the point that you jump ship, but no, I'm not a quitter. I've never been one to quit. And I'm now the only remaining senior manager there, who was there originally at that time. But that, by sticking by that, gave me the opportunity to widen and develop my role there, and obviously become able to play that key part in the strategy and direction of the organisation. So it could have been a setback. It felt like a massive setback, but actually by having that steely determination to stick by it, enabled to have a very different outcome.
What's the common myth about HR then that you'd like to change?
HR doesn't understand the business. That's one that's often brandished around, isn't it? And gets right on my nerves. Because actually, if you've got the right HR professional there with the skills, knowledge and expertise, they can make a massive difference and be a critical success factor for the business. So I'd challenge anybody who says that.
Thank you. And another question for you: if what advice would you have to would you give to someone who's maybe in a different role, or maybe aspiring to get where you are? What advice would you have?
Obviously go for it, believe in yourself, because whatever you set about to do, I strongly believe if you have that inner belief, never give up, and that determination, future career opportunities that will open up will be well worth the effort. The other thing is sort of earn your stripes. I mentioned that earlier. Generalist HR experience will always stand you in good stead, in my opinion. And even when you're in a far more strategic HR role, it always crops up at some point, and you'll dig deep on that experience in the future, undoubtedly. So yeah, know your onions and earn your stripes.
Thank you. And if you weren't working in HR, what other profession would you pick?
Oh, now then. I think I might quite like to be a detective. You'll look at me and think I'm a bit crazy there, maybe, but I do like problem solving, and I like investigation as well, which I think are key skills that lend themselves well to HR. And I love watching Vera on a Sunday evening, so hey ho.
Thank you, Louise. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, actually. If anyone does want to reach out to you, what would be the best way for them to be able to reach out to you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm active on LinkedIn, and really enjoy networking on that. Or anybody could email me at the college email address, and I'd be very happy to link in with anybody there.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. As I say, I really enjoyed this one, and to all the listeners, stay tuned for the HR Champions podcast. A big thank you to the listeners. A big thank you to Louise, and I'd like to formally bring the show to a close. Thank you.